Cardenas, Charmaine Cardenas, Damaris Villa, Aileen Bocomo, and Anna Rodriguez. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, really well. I unfortunately had some, work-related meetings scheduled through our time this afternoon.
Oh,
I
no
hope those
problem.
I hope those meetings went okay.
They went fine. It's almost impossible to stick to the agenda. We got everything, I think, covered somehow.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Um, the one action item, I guess, that involved you was our discussion about getting more business people,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that and we sort of said, well, how about having it fall to the business group? And so I'm going to send out an email tomorrow to the people who have signed up to be on that group and just
Yes.
say, what shall we do?
Yeah.
So,
I did. Yes. And it seems to me we did have a good, at least exchange with the two chambers
right,
and with the Longmont Economic Development,
right.
group. So, you know, finding a way to kind of, recruit them to think about helping us recruit, three or four
Okay.
folks to visit, I think would be a great idea. I thought your suggestion to do it was quite important, and
And maybe between all of us, we can figure out some other places to look and
yes,
people to talk to. And the other thing was that we did all agree to pursue some listening sessions. And Tim had previously, just before our meeting, had been in a call with the Economic Development Partnership folks,
yes,
and they were very interested. So it sounded like we can get them on the line to have some discussion about this. And there were some other good suggestions that came out,
excellent.
but it's not going to happen overnight. And
None, none of this ever does, right? And
nope, not at all. And
I'm,
it's a little disheartening when childcare doesn't seem to be on the top of anybody's mind, except maybe those of us that are paying real close attention.
yeah.
you
Well,
know.
it is, yes. I mean, yeah, we're beginning, we're beginning to see people wanting to have people back to work. And
Right.
then you have the question about, well, can somebody go back to work if, they need their kids sort of taken care of? And then the
Yeah.
question is who's open and how. And if that doesn't jive with somebody you already have a provider you already have a relationship with, that's really difficult.
Well, and so it seems like there would be a lot of um, a real positive answer to what's in it for me, for the businesses people, because if their employees can't come back or won't come back
Right.
because they don't have any childcare, or
Yep.
they don't have childcare they're comfortable with, or,
Yes.
it would seem like it would be worth spending some time on their part to figure out, how they could be involved.
Yeah.
So I think, we can move down that road a bit. Hey,
All
Darcy.
right. Very good. Um, and just so that you know, we're not locked down yet, but we're sort of working on it with Lorena and Richard
Mm-hmm.
about having some of the TIAs identified for our conversation next week.
Okay.
But next week, Richard will, be the moderator
Okay.
because, of the dual language necessity.
Okay.
And we have to figure out how to do this in a way that everybody can hear it, as opposed to systematically not, being able to share with certain groups of folks. But at least we're hearing from people, and I think that's a good.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely. So it'll be all Paso people?
Uh, yeah, it will be, yes. So the providers next time are all family, friend, and neighbor care folks associated with PASO,
Okay.
and they tend to call the people they've trained TIAs, which are aunties.
Right, right.
For
I figured that out from your note when you said, and you've got so many Tias. And I'm thinking, how could they possibly have that many people with the same name? And I said, there must be something else. And
that's right. It's like a designation or because it has kind of a revered
yeah,
side to it as well. So
I looked it up, and that's exactly the impression that I got, that these were special people.
right. So that'll be good. But we're then, with next week, we start to switch to people who provide the care.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'll be good. Oh my. Hi, Rick. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how you doing, Bob?
Good. Good.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Kathy,
Hi.
Darcy, Rick.
Yeah. we're-
Amy, Kathy, Darcy.
That's right. We could memorize our names.
yeah.
We don't even have to look at each other. I know who's on here.
Unmuted. Hi, y'all.
I do have a thunderstorm out my window right now. Just saying.
All right, well,
I'm starting to have a giant windstorm here, so
Yeah.
Yeah, it's windy over here.
Just full warning there, Bob, in case I cut out.
yeah, don't worry. I have the description right in front of me, so I'm all ready in case you happen to fade to black, which is oh gosh. And we just hope all of our guests of honor can make it. That would be
Yeah, that was part of why I thought maybe I should be on here just in case they can't make it for whatever reason. If that
Right.
windstorm has anything to do with their connectivity or
right.
anything along those lines. Kathy, I'm assuming you're in Longmont. I
Yeah.
could be wrong.
yeah.
So I figured I'd get on because I could at least tell you what I've heard from other people.
Right. That sounds great. And there's
Hey,
Tim.
Tim.
I actually think that I'm participating in more meetings now than I did when I was going to the office. It's really
That's definitely true.
kind of bizarre.
And I don't know if that's really true or it just feels like it. Because this chair, I'd get a new chair if I had to do this forever.
I think I just end up taking more calls, or like more meetings like this, because normally people would just catch me in the hallway and ask me the quick question, so.
Hey, Nancy.
Nancy.
Oh my. Guess I have to switch views to make sure I see everybody. And Kathy, just, I mean, I'll say it in front of everybody, but thanks to you and Darcy for, putting together the summaries. Those have been both very helpful and very thorough. And we appreciate the, having that sort of information at our fingertips.
Sure.
And
You're welcome.
yeah, even if we have to force feed it into the minds of the policymakers, sorts, we'll figure out.
That's okay. You're armed, ready
Yes.
to go, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Bob, we were so grateful for the work they've done. We put them on the Bob Polite evaluation consulting firm payroll today.
There you go. Wow.
Just so you know.
Start demands shortly.
Yes, I must admit it's a good thing. We're at the hour, but I think if we can wait, 3-4 minutes for people, especially our guests of honor, to join, we'll be in better shape.
Yeah, I just texted Jessica to see if she's heard from any of them.
Yeah. Hi, Gloria.
You guys are gonna get to listen to, oh, there's Charmaine, that's a parent, I believe.
That's good.
Charmaine, can you hear us? This is Amy from Wild Plum.
Hi, yeah, Amy, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. We're waiting for a couple other parents still.
Okay.
What's the rest of Charmaine's name?
Cardenas.
I'm sorry?
Is it Cardenas? Now, Charmaine, is that how you pronounce it? Cardenas?
Yeah, that's how I pronounce it.
Okay.
Sometimes the accent can fall on a different syllable, so I just wanted to make sure that I was getting it right.
You did good. Thank you.
Sure. Wonderful. And just to repeat for everybody, we're about at 7:02. I was thinking that we would wait till about 7:05 to make sure that we had as many of our guest participants as possible join us. So we got a couple more minutes to wait.
And Bob, I can start us off and talk a bit about Wild Plum for everybody, although like most everybody on this call knows about Wild Plum. I could at least do that part.
Yeah, that first of all, that would be good. And secondly, the meeting is recorded, and so for the record, it's a good thing to be, to do that. And yes, I will turn to you right at the appointed moment, which is 1 minute from now, and we'll kick it off. How's that?
Sounds good.
All right.
I mentioned earlier in our earlier meeting that I had invited some of the Jessica Erickson and some of the folks from LEDP. And as I'm sitting here, I realized I sent the wrong email from I forwarded the email from Kathy that was to the recording of the last session. So I just sent the one with the link tonight. So if they may be watching the recording, wondering
What's going on?
Yeah, but if they were intending to link or to log in, and they do so in a few minutes, it's because I sent them the wrong link to begin with. So apologies to them and to you.
As we, we have a lot of both links and summaries floating around now, and they're multiplying like rabbits, a couple every week. So,
well, I now have a Kathy Hall folder in my email, so it's the only way to keep track of all the correspondence. Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm the one sending it out, because then it's real easy to, I know where to go. Go to the Google group.
Yeah.
It's right there. I don't have to look anywhere else.
Well, then it is turned to 7:05, and I assume that we will have at least a couple other participants join us, and then a conversation with anybody who might be coming late. They can join us as well. But I wanted to welcome everyone to the third virtual meeting that we have set up, the Listening to Early Childhood Parents and Providers. It's sponsored by the Longmont Early Childhood Community Coalition and the Early Childhood Council of Boulder County. We had been moving prior to the onset of the virus and the pandemic toward a policy focus. And as many of you will recall, there was a meeting in March 26th, I think, in Longmont that the governor was going to come to, and we were going to talk about a lot of different things, including policy related efforts. Well, the virus rolled into the states and into Colorado, and we decided that it was probably better to do a little bit more listening rather than talking about how to fix everybody's problems. And so we have settled on this series of listening sessions. Tonight is the third and the last of the listening to parents conversations, at least in the ones that have been planned. Starting next week, we will turn our focus to providers, and we'll start with family, friend, and neighbor care providers next Monday, the 15th. We would just want to make sure that everyone has, understands the etiquette here. We would request that for everyone other than participants and Amy and myself, that people would mute their speakers, not mute their microphones, sorry, leave your speakers on and listen in. And if you use the chat function at the bottom of the screen, you can, if you have a question that comes up, that'd be a great way to sort of send it along. Please make sure it gets to both myself and to Kathy Hall, so that we have a chance to respond or list those questions, and we'll take up those questions with Amy and the parents, participants when they, after the session is over. So I think at that level, tonight's focus is on the parents from the Wild Plum Center, and we're going to turn it over to Amy Ogilvy, who will help us first get a really good sense of what the center does, and then we'll rotate to the parents that have joined us. So Amy, it's all yours.
Okay, hi everybody. I think everybody knows me as I look around, and Charmaine and I have at least had email interactions with each other. So I am Amy Ogilvy. I'm the executive director of the Wild Plum Center. We are the Head Start, early Head Start provider for the St. Vrain Valley portion of Boulder County and Weld County. We've added Weld County just in the last year. Due to there just being a childcare desert out there in Dacono and Del Camino and that portion of Weld County that the St. Vrain Valley School District covers. When I talk about the Wild Plum Center, I like to talk about it in view of our mission statement. And Bob, I don't know if you can give me screen share. I can put it up there if that makes sense, or I can read it. It doesn't matter.
No, yeah, I think, well, I think, first of all, it's Kathy's runs the session, but I think if you go to share screen, it should allow you to do that.
I think the host has to give me the permission first.
Okay.
So Kathy, click on share screen, and there should be a choice on there that says multiple people can share their screens. There's like a little arrow to the right of share screen.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing that?
Coming.
I am, but I'm not seeing multiple people. Let's see.
Do you have like a little arrow next to your share screen button? Kind of like you do on the stop video and mute buttons. They have those little like caret arrows. If you don't, it's okay. I can, oh, there we go. Nope, you're sharing your screen. That so you'll have to stop sharing your screen.
Hang on a minute.
It's okay, I can go ahead and read it. So the Wild Plum Center's mission is to prepare children for a lifetime of learning and self-sufficiency by providing a comprehensive, individualized approach to early learning and family well-being. And the words I like to talk about the most in our mission statement are comprehensive, individualized, early learning, and family well-being. So if I start with comprehensive, what I like to talk about with regard to that is that we provide a full range of services to our children and families. We are not a typical child care center in that you drop your child off at 7 in the morning and you pick them up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and you know, you send lunch with them and you send school supplies with them and things along those lines. We are comprehensive in that we're looking at the whole child, and we're looking at the health of the child, the nutrition needs of the child, the educational needs of the child, healthy development. So we're looking at all kinds of different components of the child above and beyond what most folks think of as a child care center as just a typical day of care. Our programming is individualized, so that's the second word I like to talk about. And this individualization occurs both with the children in the program and the families in the program. So the children are receiving curriculum-based education from 6 weeks old until they're ready to go off to kindergarten. We use research-based, proven curricula with our children. So in our 0 to 3-year-old program, we use a curriculum that's called Frog Street. And Frog Street has a long track record of success in teaching young children, and it's focused on 5 different areas of development. So language and literacy, cognitive development, physical development, social emotional development, and then something that we call approaches to learning, which is really that executive functioning level of working with children. And so that's in the 0 to 3-year-old classrooms. And then in the 3 to 5-year-old rooms, we use creative curriculum, which is also the same curriculum that the school district uses with their children in their preschool programs. And again, it focuses on those same 5 domains of children's development. Hi, Pete. Our individualization that I'm talking about is that every child's development is assessed, and we assess all 5 of those domains and then develop individualized goals for each child to reach the next level of their development in those areas. So we can have everything from a child who's 3 years old chronologically that's more functioning like maybe a 8-month, 10-month, 12-month-old child, all the way up to children who are advanced and are functioning more like 5-year-olds. So we're able to take that curriculum and tailor it to fit the needs of each of those children and help them develop at whatever level that they're currently at. As you can imagine, this puts a lot of work onto our staff, but they love it because it allows them to really help all children achieve rather than having to just teach to the middle and some are bored and some aren't developing because it's too advanced for them. And then with families, the individualizing, we also have other curricula, I should say, that support this particular Frog Street and creative curriculum. And probably the one we use the most is called Conscious Discipline, which is a social emotional curricula that is focused on developing children's ability to self-regulate and we lost Charmaine. Okay, wow, it's the Amy show tonight. It helps them regulate themselves to be able to manage their social emotional responses in different types of circumstances. So we spend a ton of time on conscious discipline. We also use it with our staff. So it's about staff being self-regulated. When bad behavior is occurring, we have to regulate before we can help a child regulate. So it also is a staff management tool as well. So then on the family side of things, as I was saying, we individualize for families as well. So each family has a case manager that works specifically with them. And those case managers are working with families to identify goals for self-sufficiency for their families, helping them to take steps forward in their own development as a family. We also work with families pretty closely on what we call the 4 family life practices. Those 4 family life practices are reading to your child daily, having a routine, using positive discipline strategies, and having a language-rich environment. So we're also preparing parents to be stronger educators for their children while they have their children at home. So then model-wise, probably the 2 most significant things to talk about model-wise is that while we have our center-based option that is, drop your child off at 8 in the morning, pick them up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They've had school. They've had 2 meals and a snack. Oh, they're showing me back. Good. They've had 2 meals and a snack, and we send them home ready for the evening with their family. We also have a home-based option, and our home-based option is for families who would prefer to not have their children in childcare, but really want to work on the education and development of their children and the health of their family. So we have home visitors that go into the home an hour and a half a week, and they meet families and they talk to them about all kinds of different topics. Some of the things I've already mentioned, and many, many more other things in that home-based environment. It's really a very intensive model to use with families, and families love it. So that is Wild Plum in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's very helpful. And, if you can hang with us for a while, Amy, that, we might come back to you and, ask you maybe for a particular story that illustrates some of that. connectedness and comprehensiveness that you just described. But I'd like to turn the story over to Charmaine. And Charmaine, are you with us? And if you can unmute your mic, I'd like to ask you kind of a first question about that we've been thinking about with parents that have joined us, and that is, or could you share a story either describing your own situation or the situation of someone that you're familiar with about what they were doing for childcare and things prior to the pandemic, and then how has that changed in the short term, since mid-March, and then we'll ask a question about the future in a little bit. But if you could just jump in and share your story.
Okay, so prior to the pandemic, both of my girls, Samantha is 3 going on 4, and Aubrey is 2. Both go to the Wild Plum Center. They're both at the church. So basically what I would do every morning is I get them up, I get them dressed, I take them to school. And then they have a sitter who I actually met through the Wild Plum, and she's just a nice lady that helps out. I got introduced to her, and she picks them up at 4 p.m. for me, and she keeps them until I'm back into Longmont. I work in Boulder, and she keeps them till about 6 o'clock. So that's been my schedule for the past couple years. So when the pandemic hit, I guess we were kind of all thrown for a loop, and luckily I'm able to work from home, so I have the girls here at home with me. It's a lot different. I try to keep them on their routine that they have at the Wild Plum Center, just because it works really well for us, like from their naps to, when they have lunch, everything. I try to keep the same. Samantha's been there since she was 3 months old, and I believe she thrives off of that routine. And if one day's kind of off, you could see it just in her attitude. You could really see it. So I've worked well with her teachers to figure out what times they do everything, and I try to keep it as much as the same as it is at the school, as it is here at home. And then once everything's up and running, they'll both be in school hopefully again, and we'll see if they'll go back to the sitter. But I'm not expected to go back to work until about August or September as of now. So right now we're just at home.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? And that is, and obviously a couple of years ago when your first daughter was, or several years ago when your first daughter was thinking about, you were thinking about needing care for her, how did you come to choose the Wild Plum Center?
I was looking through a lot of different options. So I was looking for family, for friends. I was kind of just listening to what everybody else did around, like through Facebook. I asked, I think, where can I find childcare? And, people were giving me links like, oh, here's this person, she does it, or there's that person. And somebody said, oh, you should check out the Wild Plum Center. It's a school. It's more like a school setting for little ones, and it's really great. I used it. So that's kind of how I found out about it. And then I applied, and then they've been there since.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, Amy, could you talk to the, how people come to you and issues of kind of waiting, kind of waiting list issues and things like that? How does that, how do people sort of get in? And then after you answer that question, think a little bit about that, a story that might be worth telling on the developmental sequences side that you'd like to share.
Sure. So, so how families come to the Wild Plum Center is through some recruiting efforts that we have. Those recruiting efforts are varied. Some of them are really targeted, and others are more general. So there is a lot of word of mouth. So hearing Charmaine say a friend said, oh, you should check out the Wild Plum Center, that happens quite a bit. Excuse me. And then we also put out a mailer every year to everyone in the Boulder County portion of the St. Vrain Valley School District through Medicaid. And so that goes out to the families. And this year it's almost 1,300 families, and this is pre-pandemic numbers of who qualify for the Wild Plum Center at this point. So 1,300 mailers, it's actually 1,301, have just gone out, and those will hit homes with our applications enclosed with some information about the program. And that is a pretty large recruiting tool for us. That's the way a lot of families learn about us. And then other targeted kinds of things, you know, we go, not this year, but we go to events like, you know, the Day of the Young Child. A different school district does some you know, information booths, and we send information through Bright Eyes and that kind of thing. So families come to us in lots of different ways. Waiting list wise, on a typical year, and this year sure isn't that, on a typical year, we have enough preschool applications to fill our program twice. So we have 155 preschool slots, and we can fill 310 easily every year. So quite a waiting list. And that becomes challenging for parents. I actually just had an email earlier today from a parent that emailed and said, I heard you guys opened back up. My child's been on your waiting list for 7 months. I keep being told that there's just not an opening. Please tell me that's not true. And I went back and I looked, and we've not had an opening in her child's age group since November 14th of 2019. So 2019. Yeah, last year. So it's been just about 7 months since we've had an opening in the program. And that's for our infant classroom. So that tells you how difficult it is to find infant slots that you're on a waiting list for 7 months. And by the time this child probably makes it into the program, they'll probably be closer to 2 or 3, honestly. And so on the infant toddler side of things, we have 48 slots for those children in the center. We have those home-based slots that I was talking about, but those aren't helpful to parents who need care while they're at work. So yeah, quite a waiting list. And then, so if I think about a story, a Wild Plum story that kind of lays everything out, I think of a particular family who has been involved with the program for some time. They have multiple children that have gone through the program. And, you know, when they came in, they had been at the Y, they had been at Boulder Journey School, they had been in a variety of different places on scholarships in different places. And when they got to us and we started working with them, they were really surprised that we were working with them. They just kind of couldn't wrap their head around, you know, why are you guys asking us what our goals are? And why are you guys trying to help us connect to resources that help us make our family more self-sufficient, or that help connect us to, you know, bigger things? Why are you talking to us about jobs and, you know, things like that? And so we started there with them, and their children, I'm trying to think of how old the oldest one is. I think she's maybe in 3rd grade. And then they have one in 1st grade, kindergarten, and 2 with us. So they have quite a few kids. But those children go to Twin Peaks Charter Academy. And a couple of years ago, the principal at Twin Peaks called me up on the phone, and she said, I'd really like to talk to you about what you guys are doing, because these children from this family are getting to Twin Peaks and they're bored because they're so ready. There's nothing, we can't keep them educated, like we just can't keep them entertained because they already know everything that we're getting ready to teach them as kindergartners. and they were on the second one of their children, sorry, the family's children, in their program at that point. And so I sat with her and I talked to her and I walked her through our curriculum. I walked her through what we do and kind of how our teachers work and teach. And she just was like, wow, you guys need to just send more families our way. And really just wanted more families to come to Twin Peaks through us. So I think about them as a family that came in and didn't understand kind of how their lives played into the education of their children and the success of their children. And we helped them see that. And then they became more and more engaged, more and more involved with their children, with the program, with their teachers, with the classroom, things along those lines. And their children are thriving as a result of that.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, that's, I mean, that's the type of story that, makes you think, what that wraparound, thoughtfulness really can do for a family and a child. Charmaine, I'd like to switch back to you with a kind of a follow-up question about the, you answered the question sort of what things were like before the pandemic and what have they looked like in the last several weeks. But could you say a little more about what the 6-month picture looks like for you, as a parent, and then you and your family, and what role does childcare play in that, in your ability to work and to return to work, et cetera?
So the next 6 months, you mean? What does it look like?
Yeah. You mentioned something about, August or September, but, we'll talk more about that and share what some of the ins and outs are about your thinking on that time frame.
So once I could go back to work, Aubrey will return. She's still in, both of them will return in September when school opens, if everything's back to normal, which I think they're ready for. I think it was kind of exciting maybe the first couple weeks to be home with mom, but they're ready to go back, and I'm ready for them to go back, just because it's really a hard job every day trying to, keep up with their little schoolwork and everything that they do. I really am thankful for their teachers because they've taught them so much. And but yeah, I am ready for them to go back so I can go back to work, and hopefully, I haven't had my sitter watch them since March, so I'll have to get in contact with her, but hopefully it'll be exactly the same as what it was before.
Well, and I'm going to stay with you for this next part of the question, and it kind of probe a little bit deeper about what this quote unquote stay at home phase as, some of the ins and outs of that. One of the conversations that has happened, at least at the K-12 level, has been, that there's been a technology outreach from the, from the schools to the families and from the families to the kiddos. How did you manage during this time on the helping them with their education side? Obviously, there's other entertainment and other sides that need to be dealt with, but if you could kind of focus on the education side, and was there a technology component to that as well?
There was. So the teachers would send individual plans for each one of the girls weekly, which I really liked too, because I could kind of go over everything. Like, let's say Sunday night, I would read everything and just kind of see what their week would look like. And then while I'm working from home, I would take breaks and do some of their things. Like Samantha would have, for example, we would take a walk and we would do like a scavenger hunt, and we would look for things, and I would take pictures of her doing these so that way I could send it to her teachers, to Sandy, to Veronica. And the teachers made themselves available to me all the time. I had a hard time with Sam, my middle child. She is very social, and she loves her friends, she loves her teachers, and she loves to be there. So she kind of had a hard time. Maybe the second month, she started to kind of have some tantrums, and she started crying for her teachers and stuff like that. So Miss Veronica made it, her and I would talk through emails, and they'd have their weekly visits. And she told me, Charmaine, if you need more visits with us, like, I can make that happen. I can make more Zoom meetings. She sent me individual books, or like her reading books, so I can show Samantha, so she wasn't missing her so much, which really helped. But they really worked with me, and we did a lot of online stuff, a lot of emails. It's hard to catch me on the phone so I work like crazy too, 7 days a week sometimes. So we would just be in communication through email, and with them sending those individual plans a week was really helpful, because I could really take each day and kind of have time for each one of them to do their little, their little schoolwork. And it was fun for them. They'd be like, is it time to do homework? Or is it time for my meeting with my teachers? They really liked that.
What did you have any difficulties with any of the technology issues, or
No.
was it mostly pretty straightforward?
It was really straightforward. And if there was something that I didn't understand, I could shoot an email over to either Hillary or Miss Sandy or Miss Veronica, and they would explain it to me, and it'd be done. It was a great experience.
And switching to you, Amy, how hard was it to help your teachers have that kind of infrastructure and outreach set up and ready to go when everybody got locked out of the centers, et cetera?
I'm not 100% the greatest person to ask this question to. I have an education manager that really led all of that process, and I can speak generally to it. I know that there were a couple, we closed on March 13th. The following week, we would have been open if school had been open. And then the week after that was spring break. So we took those 2 weeks and didn't do any instruction with children at all during those first 2 weeks. And a lot of the teachers just really got out there and, can we use Zoom meetings? Can we use Google Meets? Can we use, different education platforms until folks found the thing that worked for them? And some people used the Google Meets platform. Some people use Zoom. There were definitely different platforms that were used by the teachers, and it was really based on the teacher's comfort, and it was also based on the family's comfort as well. And I know for some families, it sounds like Charmaine didn't have many issues, which is good. But for other families, there were definitely issues. We had families that didn't have computers. We had families that didn't have internet. And so now they're trying to do preschool work on their data plan, on their cell phone, on their limited data plan, on their cell phone, and they can't, do that. So we definitely connected some families with some tablets to use. We calculated 13 families had an immediate need for a computer, and 49 families overall had some sort of need. Some families had a computer, but it was old and not really functioning very well, but the 13 had nothing at all. So we reached out with computers for families. They just borrowed them from us for that time frame. And then I know, teachers and staff spent time talking families through. Here's how you get on a Zoom meeting. You click on this link. Okay, now you're on it, and I can't see you. Can you see me? And just did that sort of work with families to help them. I mean, Zoom to me was, and I'm on a computer almost all day, every day. Zoom to me took me a little bit to figure out how it all worked. I think I just finally figured out how to schedule a meeting without it showing up on my calendar 12 times just in the last 2 weeks. So, if you don't have a lot of computer experience, that would be particularly challenging.
And question to both of you about, and this question comes from one of the folks in the audience, and that is, did the teachers and the kids actually meet over the Zoom or Lens, or was it more just sharing curriculum materials and that sort of side of the equation.
Charmaine, what was your experience?
My kids would meet with their on a Zoom meeting once a week. So they would see their teachers once a week on the Zoom meeting and talk to them and get to interact with them.
And so from a larger program perspective, Charmaine has, 2 out of, I don't know how many teachers I have, 20 plus teachers. So Charmaine had experience with 2 of them. And, what I have heard back from the teachers is different families had different levels of need and different ability to engage. So some families were able to come to every meeting. They were able to do individual meetings. They were able to participate in group meetings. Sometimes teachers were just on the screen reading the story to their classroom of children, like whatever groups of children could get on, got on during those times. And, other families were just like, I have 2 elementary school kids at home and I'm trying to figure out how to do 3rd grade math, because math is really different now than it was when I went to school. And so, I'm trying to figure out how to do 3rd grade math, and I just don't have the time to put my preschooler onto a Zoom meeting, but thank you for the activities, and we'll definitely do those, and that's good, and we can do them with the whole family too, not just, when you're out on a scavenger hunt, the whole family can participate in the scavenger hunt, that kind of thing. So it was really varied what the needs were, all the way from expert computer users that could have taught me a few things to people who really didn't have any computer experience at all.
And Amy, would you characterize that spectrum as being familiarity with the technology might be one dimension, but also do you have the technology as another, and then of course a third dimension could be interest in, which of those kind of dimensions were as in play for just kind of developing the that range that you just talked about.
Yeah, I think across the board, all of those things were in play. For some, like I said, for some families, they just didn't have experience at all. And for other families, the time was a challenge. So the interest level was low. And so, I would say, we definitely had contact with every family in the program. Thanks, Pete. Good question. Sorry, I just saw Pete's question pop up. I'm going to answer that as a part of this answer. So we had contact with every family in the program, at least every other week, face-to-face contact this way, face-to-face contact, Zoom contact, at least every other week, just to do a check-in. Again, we're focused on the whole family, not just the child. So we were also checking with families on, do you need anything? Can we support you in some way? Do you need food? We did food deliveries to homes. We did, we Amazoned in school supplies to homes for crayons and scissors and, all of those kinds of things into homes to give folks the materials to be able to do some of the projects that we were sending home. So we were reaching out in a much larger way than just what the teachers were doing from the classroom side of things, and trying to support folks that way. Pete's question was, we're talking about center-based, what about home-based? And yes, Pete, thank you. So our home-based program continued to do their home visits. So they did them virtually. They still are doing them virtually. Not quite an hour and a half each time. That's a long time to ask a family and a child to be on a Zoom meeting. So what we would typically do in an hour and a half meeting is being broken up across perhaps 2 to 3 meetings, not in a week, but 2 to 3 weekly meetings. But still all the same things. The school supplies went home, books went home. Do you need food? Do you need diapers? All of those things occurred as well.
Okay. Very good. Charmaine, I'm going to come back to you with this a question, and I'd like you to answer it from your perspective, as well as if you've heard from other families what their perspective on this is, and that is, what conditions need to be met by the center or by the place to which you're sending your child before you feel comfortable sending your child back, and what were your personal concerns, and then as you've listened to other parents, what concerns have they had?
I would say, it's kind of hard because my kids are so little. They're 2 and 3. So with them going back, and this was I know that my kids are going to have a hard time not touching other kids or putting things in their mouths or doing that sort of thing. So, that's kind of a hard question, but as long as, and I think the Wild Plum Center does a great job about this. Every time I've been in there visiting or dropping off kids, they're washing hands, they're washing their own hands, they're washing the kids' hands. But I think maybe, just increasing the hand washing, and for now maybe, and I think everybody's doing that, wearing masks. I went today to the Meeker building because they did reach out to me and asked if I needed diapers, and they got some pull-ups for Aubrey. So I went to go pick them up, and they had, they kept their distance, and they brought them out, and they were wearing masks. So I felt comfortable with that. And even before the pandemic, I think my kids have very good hygiene skills for being 2 and 3, and that's from the Wild Plum Center. So I feel that whatever rules that they implement during this time, we're going to follow, and I feel comfortable with the kids being there.
Do you hear anything, when you speak to other parents about where they are on this same sort of question?
I do have some friends that have kids in, private childcare and stuff like that, and they're choosing not to send their kids back. And I don't know if I would send my daughters back right away to the private babysitter that I have quite yet, because I just don't know, are they washing their hands? Are they doing these things? And I know that stuff's happening at the Wild Plum Center. But as far as other parents, some other parents don't have options. They have families or friends watch them, and you're kind of just hoping for the best and sending your kid where you can.
And Amy, I don't know, if you can, you've been wrestling with the shifting public health directives in this conversation at these different levels. What can you share with, us as an audience on, how those conversations have evolved, and, have they changed a lot about what you are either doing or thinking of doing going forward, or are these mostly just good practices that you were wrestling with before?
Some of it is good practices from before, the hand washing and disinfecting and things along those lines. That's just normal operations for us. Are we doing more of both of those? Absolutely, we're doing more of both of those. I would say that from a regulatory perspective, things started out pretty scattered, a lot of people just didn't kind of know exactly what to do or how to do things in the beginning. And I'm going to continue to props to Boulder County Public Health, who have just been so great through this whole entire thing. They are on top of their game. They are clear. They are paying attention to every piece of information that's coming in from a million different directions, and they're synthesizing that down into a way that's pretty simple for childcare providers to understand. And I'm learning that that's not the case in other counties. I definitely am seeing other childcare people out there going, how did you know to change your drop off and pick up procedure to what you're doing now? And it's because the county is helping us figure all of that out. So an example of some changes that we've made, our drop off and pickup happens in staggered shifts now. So it's not drop off at 8 and pick up at 4 for every family. For some families, it's drop off between 8 and 8:15 and pick up between 3:30 and 3:45. And then for another group of families, it's drop off between 8:15 and 8:30 and pick up between 3:45 and 4 o'clock. So we're staggering things to try and limit the number of people who are standing at a door to our buildings. We also move children from one site. I don't know if I said this, we have 5 sites. We move children from one site to another site because it placed 2 of our centers are right next door to each other. So it placed all of the children that are in our program for the summer all in one location so that it's easier to manage, it's easier to oversee. So that particular move was a little bit challenging, and licensing and Boulder County Public Health helped us get that open really quickly. I thought it was going to be a long time. It was really only 3 days longer than I thought it was going to be. So that was a good thing. But our families are dropping off, picking up staggered. They drop off and pick up at their classroom door, which is on the exterior of the building. So families don't even enter our buildings at all at this point in time. We have a system where they pull up in the parking lot, they call their classroom, and the teacher then tells them whether they can come up at that moment or not. When children are dropped off in the morning, their temperature is taken, which is not a normal thing we ever would have done before. But their temperature is taken, and then there's a questionnaire for the parents about different illness symptoms that the child might have. Do they have a fever? We just check that. Do they have a cough, a sore throat? Have they lost the ability to taste or smell? Do they have muscle aches? So there's a list of things. Have they been exposed to anybody with coronavirus or presumed to have coronavirus? Does anyone in the house have it? So there's just a series of questions that they get asked. And then assuming the answers to those are all no, then the child is welcomed into the classroom by their teacher. Their hands are washed. And then they come in and they begin their day and play. And then on the way out, we wash their hands. As the parent calls and says, I'm here to pick up my child, we wash their hands and we send them out the door with the parent with clean hands, so that we're washing off whatever was in the building so they're not taking it home with them.
And just one follow-up question on that. The enforcement part of what if somebody runs a fever, or what if someone fills out the questionnaire and is honest and says 3 things are going on that everybody gets suspicious about. How is that enforced?
So a couple of things. One is the staff also have their temperatures taken and answer those questions. So what I'm about to say applies to staff and to children both. So there's a decision tree that Boulder County Public Health has put out that basically says, does the family have, or does the child or staff person have X symptoms? Yes. And then you move to, okay, tell them to go home and isolate for the day, and call their doctor. It just has like the steps that they should take given the answers to the questions. And then the other pieces is that I actually called Boulder County Public Health this morning at 7 a.m. and had a phone conversation with them. You can call them and get answers to questions. So I had a person that was coming in to substitute for today, and she had been exposed to someone who she doesn't know whether the person has coronavirus or not, but the person had a high fever and she didn't know if she should come in. And I called public health and they said she should stay home until they find out whether the friend has the coronavirus or not. And so, I can get a hold of public health at 7 o'clock in the morning and ask that kind of question. So we have great resources from them in that department.
Okay. Just moving to the sort of the last question, and Charmaine, I'd like to have you think about this first, and it's about support from public policy for things that have happened either to you or in your situation, or that you might be aware of. I know public policy is a rather abstract concept, but we're trying to figure out if there's anything that would be helpful to you and your family, that would be, something that, gee, if that was available, that would really make it easier for me to do, go back to work, send my kid to childcare, those sorts of pieces. So is anything along those lines that you could think of that you'd like to share with the group?
As far as public policy, so do you mean like, can you give me an example?
Well, yes,
Thanks,
well,
Charmaine. I was going to ask for that too.
there are a couple types of examples. First is, yeah, funding support, but at the Wild Plum Center, Amy and the board and all those folks have done a very fine job of making sure that kind of once you're in, you're in, and there's a lot of support issues there. But it's also could be true that there were other networks. Amy in the introduction said, just all the interesting health-related issues and family support-related issues and job training-related issues that you can provide or you can obtain support from at the Wild Plum Center. Do any of those feel particularly helpful to you? And if they do, it might be worth offering them to other families, outside the Wild Plum Center, for all those who can't get in.
I would say that the program has helped us a lot. We've, they've supported us, the past few years, even before the pandemic, with any needs that we've had. So this is kind of a hard question, so sorry. I would say, maybe more resources as far as, I have 3 kids, one of them that's not in the center. So we were kind of all sharing one like my phone, and then I do have a work computer, but I try to stay off that. But that we were all working off of one, my phone, and then my daughter's tablet from school. So I would say maybe more funding for more electronics, maybe, or that's probably about it. I think they've been helpful. They've asked, about food, and there was lunches, and they've asked about diapers and stuff like that. So I would say maybe more funding for like electronics for families that need that. Or there was one time when we were getting on a Zoom call, and we have a discounted, I know it's through the school district, you can get Wi-Fi for, if your kids are on free lunch, you can qualify for a discounted Wi-Fi. And we're on that Wi-Fi, but everybody's on that Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi is not that great. So there was a time where I had to drive Samantha to a Starbucks to connect to Wi-Fi so she can be able to have those Zoom meetings with her teachers. So I would say maybe better Wi-Fi in that aspect, I guess.
The technology infrastructure, especially with, more than one child, might be the question.
Sure.
And have the health related issues been helpful over the time you've been associated with the center?
The health related issues. The health related issues, you mean as far as keeping us informed and, the teachings and stuff like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes, it's been helpful. I feel like they educate us in different areas, and health is one of them. And, they've given us resources and be aware and make us aware about, keeping our kids healthy. So yes, I would say that's important.
And Amy, I'd like to end with you on the kind of the policy related questions about what additional or areas would be of greatest help to the center as you've navigated these waters.
I would echo Charmaine on the technology side of things. And Tim, I'm looking at you here on this call. You're a city council member in a town with state-of-the-art internet. And, you know, Longmont's leading the way on municipal internet. And I'm just wondering what kind of availability there is through the city's internet process in the future. You don't need to answer that question now, Tim. But, you know, just put that one in your thinking cap and think about it a little bit. And then kind of to draw a little bit from the question that Pete asked on the chat too, is that I think we had an advantage this year in that when the pandemic happened and we closed and we needed to start doing remote work for all of the families knew us at that point. They knew their teachers. They had seen their teachers' faces. They knew the expectations from their teachers. And I do have a concern as the executive director of this organization that if we go into September and end up needing to close down again because the virus comes back with a vengeance, that we're not going to have had those relationships with as many of the children. In Charmaine's case, it's her fifth year for her oldest child, and it's her second or third year for her, you know, her youngest child. So with Charmaine, that will be different, but there will be a lot of families. There'll probably be close to 90 or so families that come into the program in September, and they won't have had that experience. So I'm concerned about that. I know that's not public policy, but I do want to put that out there, that from a relationship perspective, the fact that they already had the relationships with the children and the children with the teachers made this whole process that much easier for the children to stay engaged and want to be on those calls. So on the public policy side of things, for me, I think about our undocumented families, and I think about, you know, that there's already a huge divide for them in terms of resources and the things that are available to them, and in comparison to our documented families. And so I think about those folks, and I think about the lack of resources they have that is even larger than the other families. And I wonder how we can do a better job of supporting the needs of the undocumented families. You know, there's just so many resources that aren't available to them. Their housing's not available to them, at least through, you know, traditional housing paths. It's not available to them. And many, you know, healthcare, things along those lines are challenging for those families. So I'm just wondering about them in this pandemic and what that means for them in receiving services or not being able to receive services because they don't have health insurance or they don't have adequate housing or things along those lines. So I do think we need to try and do some advocacy at that level. And I know that's a steep hill to climb, but I think it's a hill that we've got to start dealing with.
Well, I think we've come to the top of the hour. I do want to forward one additional question that came in, which was just, Amy, do any of your folks use clear masks? Are they, that's kind of a question that's kind of popped up about whether that would help children see the teacher, you know, more clearly. I don't know exactly how that works, but do you use any clear masks at this juncture?
So we have just gotten 2. So this tells you how this goes. Now my dogs are going to bark while I'm talking. We have gotten 2, and those are reserved specifically for 2 staff members who have a deaf mother of a child in their classroom. So we're using those so that we're able to communicate with her because she can lip read, but if she can't see your lips, then she doesn't have a clue what you're saying. Yeah. So those have been reserved specifically for those 2 teachers. But the way they work is they're basically cloth, except for about this. And so you get, you know, cloth around it and you just get a mouth that talks. And I know, you know, on an earlier call today, there was a mention of the face shields, and Boulder County Public Health is saying no to face shields at this point in time. That's not an option. And yeah, and so Pete, I'm reading Pete's comment here that Sarah said she would ask CDPHE whether clear masks are okay. And the ones that I'm speaking of that have this with and it's still cloth and it still hooks to your ears or ties on your head, those are actually okay. to use. It's the face shields that are in question. And my understanding right now is the answer is no on those, because you're still not containing your,
Yeah.
You're not containing yourself with a shield. There's still room for stuff to get out.
Right.
But yes, Pete, I do share that concern. I share, especially for brand new children that are coming into the program that don't know the staff, and then there they are, and you don't know whether that staff's smiling at you or yelling at you, because you can't really see the look on the face. And I know with my own child, who's now a grown adult, but I know with him, he thought people were yelling at him when nobody was yelling at him. He was just super sensitive that way. And so he needed to be able to see faces so that he could read a face and not just kind of hear the tone.
Yeah. Well, we've come to a little past the top of the hour, actually, but I want to thank Charmaine and Amy for, helping us understand the parent perspective on the Wild Plum Center side of business. And I know there's additional information if you want anything about the center itself, either asking Amy or following up with the website would get you what you needed. This is, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the end. This is the third and the final sort of talk or listening session with parents. Next week, we rotate to providers, and we'll start with family, friend, and neighbor care, and then rotate to centers and licensed family homes. And then, at the request of several folks, some of whom are on this call, we'll try to rotate into listening to some of the business perspectives on this time and what they need from workers, and what their workers are telling them they need as they come back to work. So we'll be trying to schedule those. At the moment, the providers run us through June. Those will be in July when they get scheduled. So I want to say special thanks to Kathy Hall for hosting the session and sending out the invites and making sure everybody is, able to kind of come and join the meeting. Thank you again to the Wild Plum Center folks for sharing their stories, and thank you for joining us this evening. And with that, I think Kathy, I don't have any additional comments to you. And if not, then
I don't. Bob, if you'll hang on at the end, but have a nice evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Charmaine.
Thanks, Charmaine.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Amy.
Hello.
I just wondered did we have a breakdown in terms of the other group, of the other folks? Knowing how to call in? I just wondered if I didn't do something, or
no.
somehow we missed.
No, I do think they were confirmed last week. Jessica Gutierrez was the
Right.
person that Amy had sort of designated to do this, and she did a really nice job of first getting them. And Charmaine actually was only added today, literally.
Well, I was going to say, because I didn't know her name at all.
Yeah, she was, I think, added at I think I got the message at 3. I said, well, just come and whatever. Now, that having been said, it was never true that Jessica was going to join us. And I think that was a little bit of a problem, because, I guess if I had been thinking, it would have been possible to email them but like I don't have a phone number for any of the, any of the folks except for Amy, but that's because we all know Amy. But
And I have not been connecting with any of the panelists because they wouldn't know me at all.
right.
So I haven't contacted them, sending them any information, thinking that Jessica or somebody else would get that information. And if that isn't working, we can
Well,
change that.
It didn't quite work this time, but I think it has been working. So
It has to work. Okay.
yeah. So
Well,
I don't.
if you get a different sense of that, let me know, because I could certainly, in addition to whoever contacting them, I could easily send them that same invitation. That's not a problem.
Well, I think so. And people have. So Amy emailed me at about 4
Uh-huh.
and said, "Well, do you know that Jessica wasn't going to be there?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, I was planning on being there, but if we get a big wind, it could blow down my internet connection of Lions." And I said, "Fine," and I was prepared to kind of do the introduction. But what I think she was nervous about
Okay.
about people joining, and I have to be a little harder in the next couple days with Richard and Lorena to make sure that we're pretty seriously locked in for next Monday, because
I think this
everybody
went
has said
fine.
yes, sort of, but not yes definitively.
Right. I think this went fine. You did a great job of including Amy, and she was flexible to hang in there and answer questions. And so I think we got good information. That was not the problem. It just wasn't maybe as broad as we would like.
Yes, and everybody, has both a different perspective,
Yeah,
which is, really why we're trying to do it.
which is good. Yeah.
Would have been much better if we'd had the other 3 people who were quote unquote promised, but
Well,
you know,
as I
they,
said, if you would like for me to contact them directly, I don't mind doing that. I just think since any of the panel, it's unlikely that any of the panelists would know me. I would
Yeah.
just want
Yes.
whoever the coordinator is with them to also let them know. But
Yes.
think that over, and when we get to this next bunch, I can do that or not,
Yeah.
whatever works.
Well, first of all, I've been thankful. Everybody has said, "Oh, it's hard. Monday night's hard." Blah, blah, blah. And then, kind of toward the last minute, people get a commitment. And this was the first time we had a break, in the commitments. And
Right.
we'll work on it. But I think I can keep Richard on Lorena's case to make sure that, we have, at least 3 of the Tias.
Yeah,
So that we
yeah.
could get around
That would be really good.
All right.
Okay, well, thanks, Bob. You pulled it off fine. Don't worry about that at all. But if there's just any process issues or improvements we can make, let me know.
That sounds good, Kathy. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Hey, talk to you later.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.